Hello, this is Key Ideas, and I'm your host, Leela Viss. This podcast contemplates the rhythm of life as a piano teacher and music maker. Through illuminating interviews and transparent reflections, you'll feel validated, encouraged, and empowered. I'm pleased to share this episode with the brilliant Andrea Miller. About 5 years ago, I started following Andrea Miller on social media and then began listening to her podcast, The Music Studio Startup. I often wondered how a 15-year-old could be such a seasoned expert on the topic of music teaching and business. I've come to find out that Andrea is not 15. She graduated from college a number of years ago, has launched a successful career as an entrepreneur in the music business, and is married with 2 children. Perhaps you've already been an avid fan of her podcast, enrolled in her courses, or heard one of her many timely presentations at national conferences. Today, you're in for a treat as Andrea shares how she developed her career straddling both music and business. In my day, those never came as a packaged deal. You'll learn about the tools she's designed to help music teachers who resist the business side of their profession to manage their studios. We cover some common mistakes teachers make when it comes to running their studios, and you'll appreciate her wisdom on how she balances her life as entrepreneur, wife, and mom. But first, here's good friend Renee Holloman to tell you more about Andrea.
Andrea Miller is known in music circles for being a piano teacher and the host of Music Studio Startup Podcast, a show that delves into all aspects of business ownership for independent music teachers and music school owners. Although Andrea started teaching piano in high school, her first career aspirations were entrepreneurial, and she has always kept a foot in both the music and business worlds. In addition to her teaching studio, Andrea runs several businesses of her own and has served on the startup team and as a consultant for many others. She has worked with entrepreneurs in a variety of industries, from retail to hospitality to legal publishing. And she particularly enjoys working with music teachers who want to build personally fulfilling and financially stable careers in music. She's a nerd at heart, and her clients will be the first to tell you that she's prone to spontaneous spreadsheet making as a way of processing business decisions. Her enthusiasm for number crunching has proven to be contagious, because even the most number-phobic clients continue to come back for more. In her free time, Andrea can be found with her husband and 2 boys, rehabbing their 1911 home and enjoying life in St. Louis. Now, here's Leela with Andrea.
Welcome, Andrea. Thank you so much for being here today.
Hi, Leela. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Well, it's a pleasure to chat with you today here on Key Ideas, and I'm a huge fan of your podcast, The Music Studio Startup, and I was honored to be a guest on your podcast, but that's not actually how I first heard of you. It was back when I was mentoring graduate students at the University of Denver, and a graduate student named Casey Loudon just went on and on. She gushed about you and told me I had to check you out. And to her credit, she also did say that she thought I had a good voice for podcasting. So maybe that's where this podcast came from. But and then I think you also did a nice little plug for Bradley Sowash and I when we were doing a webinar. I think you plugged us on a social media.
Oh, possibly.
That's that. Yes. Okay. So anyway, this interview is a long time in coming, and I know it's worth the wait. So I do definitely thank you for spending time with me today.
Oh, that's so fun. And shout out to Casey. Thanks for making that introduction.
Oh, well, I learn a lot from a lot of people. It takes a village for me, that's for sure. But I want to dive right in. Now, when I was talking with you for the podcast that I was going to be on your podcast, the episode that I was going to be on your podcast, we were talking about how we both fell into this profession. And I think it was very fascinating that you became a musician and a business expert together at the same time. And usually those 2 professions don't come bundled into a typical college degree. So I'd love for the listeners to hear your story.
Yeah. So I would say it really goes back to when I was like 3 or 4 years old. And I told my parents I wanted to open a used car dealership. Like I've always been interested in entrepreneurship. I don't know where the used car dealership thing came from. And that has not come to fruition
Yeah,
yet. I
okay.
always say yet
Well,
because who knows,
right.
but
Okay. And now, we used to think of them as slimy, but I don't think of you as slimy. So it is an interesting profession that you thought of. So
yeah. And I mean, my parents were not in business. They were not in car sales or anything. So I really don't know where that came from. Um, but I think I don't know. I've just been predisposed to that since a young age. So then I always was starting businesses as a kid and just loved it so much. Always read all the books I could get from the library on entrepreneurship. I remember learning to spell entrepreneurship because it's kind of hard, but I
yeah.
needed to be able to search it in the library card catalog. So, um, yeah. And then I feel like entrepreneurship was really like my first love. And then I had some great piano teachers, and I feel like I fell more into piano teaching than entrepreneurship, even because we happened to have a piano in the living room. And so I happened to play, and if we didn't, where would I be today? I don't know. And then I had teachers, especially my first teacher, who was really good at finding challenges for me. And I was someone who thrived on challenge. So she would put one in front of me and I would chase it. And I think that like hooked me on piano was just there was always something to challenge me.
Oh, I am
Yeah.
curious. Can we pause a minute? What was one of the challenges she gave you?
Oh, so I did the guild auditions.
Oh, yes.
And
Yeah.
she told me about the national level and you could do 10 to 14 pieces. And I was like, I'll do that, which is, different when you're 8 and your pieces are a page long than it
Yes.
is when you're 14 or something. But yeah, she just told me about the things that I could do. And I really credit her for that. Like that is the thing that I took away from my first piano teacher was just you can always find some way to make taking the next steps exciting.
Well, and she gave you aspiration. It
Mm-hmm.
sounds like you are a goal setter and a goal achiever.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Those two work well in the business and the piano world.
They do. They do.
All right. So
Yeah.
take us beyond the piano teaching.
Yeah. So then I started teaching when I was in high school, and that kind of happened on accident. Just a friend asked if I could teach their daughter. And already I had planned to study business in college. But then I just started taking piano more seriously in high school and again, having teachers who challenged me. And so I didn't want to just drop it. And kind of, I guess, middle school, high school is when I decided I would open a multi-teacher studio. And so then the natural step to me seemed like, okay, well, I know I'm doing business, and this is where I was pretty naive. And I thought I could major in music or I could minor and I'd be practicing the same amount. It'd be the same amount of work, which anyone who's majored in music knows that is not true. That is the thoughts of a 17-year-old.
Okay. Yes.
So, yeah, that was kind of in high school. It was just, I had a teacher who sort of assumed I'd be a music major, and I naively thought it'd be the same amount of work to major as minor. So that's how I ended up studying both. And my primary degree is technically in business, but it was really, you're doing the core requirements for both the business school and the music department. And yeah, it was a lot of work.
So you were never prompted by someone to consider a business and a music degree together. That was Andrea's idea. That was your idea.
Yeah. And I came to find out later after I graduated that my parents thought it was a really bad idea.
Okay. And why would they think that?
Because money is finite, and they had always done a really good job setting expectations for us, like growing up on, you're going to have to pay for a significant portion of your college and all of that. And they were worried that I wouldn't be able to finish the 2 degrees in 4 years, which is totally reasonable. And
did they really know their daughter? Because I had no doubt in my mind that you would finish in 4 years.
Well, I give them credit because they do a good job of, they'll have their opinions, but they often don't share them if they think it'll influence me in a way that'll limit me. So there have been many times in my life where they've shared after the fact that they thought a decision I made was a bad one, and it ended up working out right.
Well, good on those parents. Good for them.
Yeah.
So, and did you get any feedback from teachers in both communities that were puzzled by what you were doing here? Why were you doing
Constantly.
music and business? Okay, really? Okay.
Constantly,
Okay.
yes. Yeah, they often felt at odds with each other,
Mm,
partially just the way the course schedule was set up. So the business school often would have guest speakers come in, entrepreneurs coming in and talking on Friday afternoons. Well, that's also the time that the music
right.
department had set aside for student recitals. So there was often this clash, just logistical clashes between the two. And then there was music teachers, I think, have their agendas for their students
Mhm,
that aren't
mhm.
necessarily aligned with the students' goals or agendas. I think I have to check myself, as a teacher, making sure I'm not
Uh-huh.
pushing my own agenda on a student. But I definitely felt that from the music department. Um, the business professors seem to be more open-minded about it, I guess, maybe because they were used to people combining majors. Um, but yeah, there was a lot of, you should be in the practice room. You need to be spending more time in this hallway and all those things from the music department. And it really came to a head my senior year, actually, because I had my senior recital scheduled. And then I had entered a business plan competition in the fall and got placed high enough in the state level that I could go to the national level. And the date of the national business plan competition was the same day as my recital, but it was in California and my recital was in St. Louis.
Uh-oh.
And it just felt like this, great moment of the two combining together. What a way to finish a senior year. So I remember going into my music advisor's office and I brought chocolate and I said, "Hey, got a favor to ask." Um, and so we rescheduled the recital and I did the business plan competition. But it ended up being a really neat senior year because I invited my business school professors to come to my recital and it was just like these things collided and um, I don't know, it was like everything I'd been working for 4 years was it had always made sense to me, but it was like it finally clicked with both professors on both sides, when they
Right.
saw that I was wanting to combine these two and build a business out of it.
Well, and that's the other thing is combining these two is the smartest thing that we could do nowadays. And I'm hoping
Mhm.
that things have changed. But when I graduated with a master's degree in piano pedagogy and performance, I did not think of myself as a businesswoman. I was perhaps a piano teacher and a piano player, but I was not a businesswoman. And
Mhm,
guess what
mhm.
I'm doing most of the time? Is a lot of business and
A
managing
lot of business.
customers and doing numbers and taxes and uh, you know, if I could do it all over again, I would be an Andrea. So, do you think a lot of people are following in your footsteps now?
I think so, and I think there's more options for entrepreneurial kinds of degrees and certificates and minors and things like that, which there wasn't before. And I will say too, there was a big, it felt like a big separation even within the business school between a standard business degree and an entrepreneurship degree.
Oh, okay.
Because when you look at a business degree, your accounting classes are starting at, okay, this is your um, $10 million company. And an entrepreneurship finance class starts at this is zero or negative $100,000.
Yes.
And how do you go from there? So I will say, I've got people asking me all the time, like, what business classes should I take? And it's kind of hard to recommend things because if you're taking a general accounting class or business class, it might just start at a place that's irrelevant for an entrepreneur anyway. Um, but there are
Mm,
more options and there are more entrepreneurial finance classes and, entrepreneurship in the arts and just like more survey level classes that might not go as deep as a business degree, but are more realistic to fit in to, add to your schedule of an already very full music curriculum.
mhm.
So I do see it shifting, but it still can be a challenge.
Well, and I think that's where you kind of fill in the gaps. So I noticed your tagline at your site is helping teachers thrive as entrepreneurs. So we kind of talked about this already. When did it first occur to you that piano teaching as a business and teachers might need help? So okay, we know
Mhm,
that you have felt that it has been a business from day one.
mhm.
And when did you realize that other teachers may need help with their own business?
Yeah. So I had run my multi-teacher studio. That's what I started right after I
I
graduated.
can't believe you did that. And is that still up and running? You still have multi-teachers teaching for you,
It is running.
multiple
I no
teachers.
longer run it, which is kind of how I got to where
Oh,
I am today.
oh,
I started that business, was ready to run it I figured I'd run it at least 10 years because
okay.
I like lots of different things. But
Mm-hmm.
and then I got married, and that throws all kinds of wrenches into things. So my husband's job actually relocated and to 900 miles away. I wasn't going to take this studio with me.
Yeah.
And so I passed that studio off. Is still running today. It's kind of funny because the teacher running it now has been running it longer than I did. And a lot of the teachers teaching there have been involved longer than I was. But so I had this experience, running a multi-teacher studio, loved working with the startups. And then we moved, and I didn't know how long we'd be in that new place. And it was not fun to leave the studio. And I was like, I got 4 years in, I did all this, like the legwork of starting something. And I didn't want to constantly be restarting if our life was going to be such that we were moving every few years. So that's when I started working with solo entrepreneurs and other business owners, starting their businesses. And I realized I love doing this. I love working with other people. I have a passion for teaching music, and I was always teaching on the side too. But I realized that the entrepreneurs I was working with had the same questions as music teachers were asking about taxes or finance or marketing or anything like that. And so I did just decide to take what I was working with general business owners and pivot it to working with music teachers and making it specific in that way.
So right now you are not in charge of a multi-teacher studio.
Correct.
And you passed it along, and now you are helping people build multi-teacher studios?
Multi-teacher, some solo teacher, lots, kind of everything.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. And okay, now I know someone who owns a multi-teacher studio and is interested in passing it along, which you did. And is this like a dentist practice or a doctor's practice where someone else pays you for what you've established?
Could be. Yeah. There's getting to be more and more precedent for that, I think. There wasn't, or I wasn't aware of it at the time. And I actually think I got not great advice on how to pass it off. I am really happy with the way the transition worked for me. But I do think sometimes we sell ourselves short as business owners. So
wouldn't it be nice if you were still getting royalties from every single lesson that was taught in that studio?
That could be amazing. Yeah.
But that didn't happen. You didn't have,
and I'm super happy and, really good friends still with the owner who took it over. So I have no regrets, but I do think I didn't get advice from someone with knowledge in the industry. And I think I would have liked to have considered other options. And also something I do try to delve into on the podcast, and have interviewed several teachers who have sold businesses or done the transitions differently. Because I just think there are options. There are always options, and it's good to consider them.
So let's dive into these tools then that you offer to help teachers build their solo. I like the word solo or multi-teacher studios. So what kind of tools do you have?
Yeah. So my big passion is I want teachers to be able to hold their own in a business conversation. So if you're talking to a banker or a potential investor or trying to sell your business, I want teachers to really know the business side of it and have confidence in that, not oh, this is the part of the business that I don't understand, and I just trust someone else is going to take care of it, or my accountant or something like that. So I do try to make sure everything is grounded in standard business finance. And
where were you back 20 years ago? I'd see stars circling up around my head when they started talking. It was embarrassing, and it was I don't know, it was really hard to dive into it all when you didn't know a thing. So
it's really hard. And there's no translators. So I try to be a translator. That's what it is for business to music. So I have a couple of offerings right now. I have my Business Building 101 course that just kind of guides teachers through what I think are the the key decisions you have to make to build a sustainable studio. And I always describe like sustainable is something that's fulfilling to you as a teacher and also financially sustainable. And so all those key decisions to set up a studio that can achieve that. And then kind of after that course, I realized that there was a big gap between a solo teacher and a multi-teacher studio, and particularly on the finance area. And since I like to nerd out about that and do spreadsheets, I just
for you.
started my finance course. And that's for more the multi-teacher studio or even a solo studio owner who wants to, maybe they're looking at making a big investment in their studio, like renting a space or buying a space, or they're looking at starting this business that's going to cost $50,000 in startup expenses, and maybe they're taking out a loan, and just like bigger financial decisions that you don't really want to make from your gut. And so I get into how to read financial statements and put together financial projections so you can like have a more informed way of looking at those decisions. And with
I just keep thinking, oh my, I didn't have any of those things. I was like, okay, here's my budget. Oh, that's how much I spent. Okay. But anyway, okay, keep going. Yes.
Yeah. And there's no reason that you should know it. And really, I should say it's kind of a business language that you do learn in business school. But there are lots of people who are professionals and don't know this either. And yeah, even though it touches every industry, it does.
We'll get right back to our conversation, but first, I have a few questions for you. Do you suffer from decision fatigue when attempting to improvise? Do you avoid sitting down to improvise at the piano because that persistent voice of judgment says, you should stick to Beethoven? Do you improvise, but feel overwhelmed when it comes to turning your ideas into a composition? Do you panic when a student walks into a lesson with something they created at the keys because you're stumped on how to help them further explore their ideas? If you answered yes to any or all of my questions, it's high time you join a Composium. A Composium is a 4-week class with a step-by-step process that shows you how to organize your ideas into a rock-solid structure and notate them in NoteFlight. Here's what Marie Lee, a first-time composer and expert group teacher, said about the Composium. I have actually never liked composing until now. This approach is really working for me. Because the Composium formula works, many alums are returning for more. It's because they rub shoulders with other creatives in a safe and nurturing community. There are 5 different Composiums scheduled throughout the summer of 2023, with dates and times that are friendly to almost any time zone. And now there's a choice. You can choose to learn how to arrange or compose or sign up for both. I can't wait to meet you and your creativity this summer. Now, back to my chat with Andrea.
Awesome.
I know.
On.
I interrupted you. But you were talking about your second course. Yes, you have your 101 course, and then what's your next course? Your solo and your
business finance. Okay. Yeah. So I noticed that there were teachers who were like wanting to make these big decisions and just not having the information or not having tools to equip them to make them in a really healthy way. And I want teachers to be empowered to like really own those decisions, not like, I think I'm doing the right thing here, but really just be able to feel good about them. And then the third program I have is a mastermind, which is part accountability group, part group coaching. And those are small groups of teachers. And I have so much fun in these because they're teachers who have all different goals. Maybe they're building their private teaching studio. Maybe they're building a multi-teacher studio. Maybe they're going to multiple locations. And so it's a group of teachers all working towards different goals. And we are super supportive, keep each other on track and do a lot of more strategic work, goal setting, tracking, and then troubleshooting along the way with whatever decisions are getting us stuck, and share resources and all that. So those are kind of the things, but always trying to center around figuring out what the teacher actually wants for themselves, not not a prescripted model of a business that I think they should have, or someone else. Again, taking away that agenda, and just
Right.
helping teachers kind of thrive.
Well, two things. First of all, I love the word sustainable because we have seasons in our lives. And I would say our profession as piano teachers, we can load them up if we need to, and we can take off the student load when we need to be a mommy or a daddy or whatever. And so it's a beautiful profession. And yet,
Yes.
whatever season we're in, we want it to be sustainable so that we can fluctuate with our lives. And
For
not very
sure.
many professions can do that. So I think that's such a good word.
Yeah. Yeah. And you really can invent your studio to be whatever you want it to look like.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it for that reason. And you can scale up. You can say, oh, this is a
Yes.
season where I can teach 50 students, and this is a season where I only want to teach 25. And yeah, I think it's great.
And then the second thing is that you are in contact with people one-on-one, and you know what they're going through. And a lot of times, you know, and probably personally have been through some of their mistakes that they've made. So what do you see teachers, what are the main or common mistakes that you see teachers making?
Yeah, for sure. The biggest one, I think, is trying to build a studio vision that's not your own.
Mm,
And where I see this come up actually is in enforcing studio policies. Like if a teacher is having a hard time enforcing their policy, it's because it's not their policy. They've adopted someone else's policy, and they don't like it. Like so yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. Trying to build a studio that someone else has told you should build, or that defines someone else's version of success and is not your own. That one I see over and
good
over and
point.
over. Yeah. And it's tough because, you might be looking at advice from people and see someone really established saying to do something one way, and it might be great for their context, and it just doesn't make sense for yours. So I think that's the biggest thing. And it's hard to have that self-awareness of
Hmm.
what you want, especially when you're starting out. But
Hmm. Well, you have this banner of, oh, I should be doing this, which I learned early on, don't should on yourself. And so, yes, that is true, to stand up, take people's ideas, and then make them your own. Okay.
Yes.
So, okay,
Yeah.
that's first mistake. What's another mistake?
Yeah. Another one, it kind of piggybacks on that, but the idea of like crowdsourcing advice. Um,
Okay. Yes.
like,
So you're talking about a face group forum, like, hey, what do you think? And then,
yeah.
oh,
And great way to gather ideas, but you
okay.
have to filter them through
Hmm.
your own goals or your own vision.
Hmm.
So yeah, should I hire another teacher? Well, maybe it depends.
Hmm.
What do you want to be manager? Do you enjoy your solo teaching? Um,
I
yeah,
know.
someone,
No.
yeah, there is no one best path. And
Well, I think right away people think that, oh, you must be successful if you are hiring other teachers. And when I look at it now, I do not want to manage others. That is so
mhm,
not in my wheelhouse. And so I know I would not be successful, even if that is deemed successful. I would not
mhm.
be successful at that. Mm-mm.
And there's so many thriving solo studio owners who are more profitable at the end of the
Mhm.
day, really just leaning into that and doing it really well. And I see more thriving solo teachers than I also see a lot of struggling multi-teacher studio owners
Mhm.
who, yeah, I think they should be doing it. Maybe they don't even really want to. Certainly you can, like there are business models to support either goal, but just do the thing you want to do. Do the
Mm,
job that sounds fun for you,
yeah.
not what.
Well, and I'm thinking what I'm hearing in your mistakes is that teachers are assuming that they have to do what everybody else does,
Mhm.
and kind of looking inward. And I just remember I had a moment where things changed, a light bulb moment where I decided that, oh my goodness, I really don't want to teach from 3 to 7, the bewitching hours.
Uh-huh.
I was really not liking that. But then it just worked for our family. It was, what I could do after I looked at other careers. Like maybe I just want to go work at a coffee shop. I don't know. I had but what it came down to, I read Philip Johnson's book. I don't know which one it was, but the Dynamic Studio, it has this big long name.
Mhm.
And it made me decide that, you know what, I'm going to do this and I'm going to have fun doing this. And suddenly when I took ownership of what I was doing in a lesson, I enjoyed myself. And that's when I think we become sustainable in our business. Could that be
Uh-huh.
that kind of where you're at too?
Yeah. Yeah. So reinventing the lesson itself made it fun
Yes,
for you and
correct.
changed. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then it was, oh, I can charge money for this, and wow, people are doing better, and all that kind of stuff. But it sounds like you really want teachers to think about who they are and what their own goals are before they
Mm-hmm.
start listening to everybody else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I
Mm,
love your example, because if you had asked that question, like, how do I not teach from 3 to 7? You would have gotten answers like, do in-school programs
yeah.
or do early childhood or something like that. And that didn't
Mhm.
really matter. Like, it was really about you finding it a job that was worth having from 3 to 7, it
Right.
sounds like. Yeah.
Oh yeah. It definitely transformed. In fact, I don't know. I talked about this with somebody else too, and they're like, well, did you document that moment? Like, no, I don't remember, but it was a mental shift that really propelled me into my teaching. And then I never looked back.
Hmm.
Then I was always excited about it. So, okay. So I'm hearing a common theme with the common mistakes. Any other mistakes, maybe a little tinier mistakes that we tend to make?
Um, yeah, I think the business side, I mean, this is usually what I'm talking about, is the business side of
Mm-hmm.
things. And you don't have to love it to do it well, even.
Mm-hmm.
And giving it a little bit of attention and systematizing it can reduce the stress of the business side.
Can you
You,
give us an example of what a system might look like for a teacher, who is
yeah.
lacking in that? Like, it doesn't
Mhm.
have to be everything, but yeah, give us an
Yeah.
example.
So we're here in March recording. I'm not sure when this will air, but
Mhm.
taxes aren't on
Ah,
everyone's mind right now.
yeah.
Sorry,
Oh,
I had
yeah.
to go there.
Yes.
um, and there's so many little routines you can implement throughout the year that are going to take 5 minutes a week to
Hmm.
maintain your finances. So your tax year is just a breeze. Like, truly, you can do most of your accounting in 10 to 15 minutes a week. Um, or depending on the scale of your studio, it might make sense to do it once a month or every other week, or, a few minutes just each week. Um, but it's, you have to give some attention, some forethought to
You
setting
do.
up that system, but then your tax season is not stressful. And so you don't have to love the business side to still do it well. And actually, I think that could be a lot of motivation to just dedicate 1 quarter to getting some systems in place to make
Mhm.
it something you don't have to think about every single day and just dread.
Yes. Well, and I just finished my tax report that I submit to my tax accountant, who happens to be my husband, who just works down works down the hallway here, and we love TurboTax. But every year I get a little bit better at getting all my numbers together,
Mhm,
and then I
mhm.
notice that, wait a minute, I'm struggling with this area. I need to improve this. So, I do think a system is so important, and every year that system is going to get a little bit better. Do you find that in your life too?
Yes.
Mhm.
And you don't need to overcomplicate the system for the stage you're at. So, like with taxes, continuing that example, my first year was nothing, in high school, keeping
Yeah.
no records, and then
Mhm.
looking at my bank statement at the end of the year as the the reference. And then the next year, I started keeping the Excel spreadsheet, and then kind of just expanding on that. And then kind of building out that Excel spreadsheet so it automatically categorized my expenses. And then studio management software came in and doing that.
Mhm.
So yeah, just that, whatever the next little step is, you don't have to jump into a huge complex system if that's not the way your brain works. Um, but just, yeah, little by little,
Mhm.
getting more organized.
Okay. So it doesn't just come in one big explosion.
Yeah, I
I'm going
don't
to be an
think.
Andrea tomorrow, and I'm going to have my whole life figured out business wise.
Oh no, this is all many years in the making.
Yes, yes. So speaking of which, you wear substantial and admirable hats as a business owner. So you also happen to be a wife and a mom. So you have a lot of hats to balance. So how does this happen?
Yeah, I was trying to think of a way to answer this question that was um both honest and and helpful or encouraging.
Wait a minute.
Uh,
You're not going to say that it's all just shiny and bright over there every moment of the day?
not always, not always.
Oh, it's hard.
Um, yeah. So, but I am content actually. My husband and I often reflect on our life is kind of crazy, but I think we've put boundaries on the crazy in a
Mm.
way that we're satisfied.
Ooh,
Um,
okay. I like
so
that.
yeah. So my days from, 8 to 5 or something are pretty crazy. Like sometimes I get to the end of them, I'm like, what even happened today? I don't know. It's just a
Really?
blur.
Okay.
And then the kids come home and there's the own family crazy, and then for a few hours until they're in bed. Um, so they're crazy days, like individually they are crazy.
Hmm.
I think we've done a lot of discussion about what is our vision for our family and our work lives and our personal lives. And so we have a contentedness about this is the season we're in. It's going to be crazy during the days, but then we do turn it off and we're parents in the evenings
Mm.
and on
Mm.
weekends. And so we can tolerate the crazy
Okay.
during the day of business and career and work. And
So what do you think about that uh, phrase? Oh, you can have it all and everything's possible. Do you think? Do you believe in that? Now,
um,
I've already made a biased tone with that, but I've got an opinion. But
I know there's so many things I don't do on both the personal side and the business side. And I had a stay-at-home mom growing up, and I knew I wouldn't be a full-time stay-at-home mom. I feel very fortunate that right now we wanted to keep our kids home some days. So my husband and I each take a weekday off and are with the kids.
okay.
Um, so I feel like we've been able to again strike that balance of
Hmm.
what we value. But I also knew I'd go crazy if I was full-time stay-at-home mom. So yeah, I don't think have it all, but I have what I want. so so I see it working. Yeah, and there are a lot of things on the business side. Like I generally don't work after dinners. I generally don't work um Saturday mornings. Sometimes I'll get couple hours during nap time, but so there's a lot I don't do on the business side. On the personal side, there's a lot I don't do there. Like I haven't hosted a birthday party for my kids.
Okay. Yeah.
And my oldest is almost 4. Um, and I think when the helpful things I did on the parenting side when I had kids was knowing that what my mom's role looked like in my life growing up was going to be substantially different because I
Mm.
was not a stay-at-home mom full
Hmm.
time. And so I kind of I just got rid of the baseline as like I'm starting from zero and building what this looks like fresh
Mm.
from nothing instead of
Hmm.
this is what my mom did. I need to do these things, or this is what my sister does, or um, whatever. So I think just throwing out any precedent was
Oh
really
my.
helpful.
I threw out what to expect when expecting, or the first year. I remember that because my babies never slept when they were supposed to, and they never. Anyway, I threw out a lot of books because like I couldn't follow the rules. So I know what
Okay.
you're talking about. You have to establish your own home and your own boundaries. So I appreciate that, and good for
Uh-huh.
you.
Yeah. And the only parenting books I read are by economists. So that
Okay.
probably.
Well, what I have to say, looking back, is we were teen parenting. And I don't know if
Mhm.
is that kind of what you're doing as well?
Yeah,
Because
for sure.
every once in a while, I wished I had a longer commute because I had just been with the boys all day. And at 3 o'clock, it's now time to go teach. And so I hand, here, he needs his diapers changed. And then I have to go downstairs. I have to be all nice and Miss Leela. And,
Uh-huh.
I could have used just a few more minutes of buffer time before I had to change hats. But
I totally understand that. Yeah. Yeah. Super rely on my husband to do parenting as well and household
yeah.
things. We kind of share that. And I also have a team too with music studio startup and
Mm-hmm.
very capable people, and I let them do their thing and
Mm.
um
So you're not a
can watch it.
micromanager.
Well, I try not to be. I try not to be. Because I can't. That's one of the
Yeah.
things that I can't do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think we learn that as humans is that we can't do everything, but
Hmm.
you do a few things very well. And I think more than just a few things. So congratulations on getting it all together. And we look forward to seeing what comes next for you and your wonderful advice. I think it's filling a gap that many of us don't have. Even with a college degree and maybe a few business classes, I bet you are going to offer people so much more than what they could have ever learned in one course in college. What do you think? Do you have an opinion on that? I bet you do.
Well, I do try to curate it so it, makes sense.
Mhm.
It's answering questions for a music teacher specifically. So there's a lot you can learn about finance or accounting or marketing or anything. But you're busy music teachers and you
Right.
want to learn about pedagogy and how to teach
Yeah.
chords and improvisation and things like that Leela can
Exactly.
teach you. And so yeah, I want to like curate the content so it really
I
helps
appreciate that.
answer questions.
Because I only want to know what I need to know. My brain just doesn't have room for extras. So
Yeah.
we appreciate you for curating that for us, Andrea. So before you share a quote, I asked you for a quote. Please tell us what you're up to right now and where we can learn from you.
Yeah. So right now I just finished the first round of my finance course. This winter was the first round of that. And then I've got the ongoing courses. I'll actually be taking maternity leave this summer. So
Oh, that's exciting.
yeah.
Congratulations.
So thank you.
Uh-huh.
So I'm actually like gearing up for that time off, which
Mhm.
takes its own planning.
Mhm.
And then, but all those courses will still run. And again, my amazing team keeps it going.
Mhm. Nice.
And you can find everything on musicstudiostartup.com. I'm also on Instagram at Music Studio Startup and Facebook at Music Studio Startup.
Nice. And I listened to, it sounded like a little sister podcast that's
Yes.
branching off from your podcast. So tell us about that.
Yes. So I've been working with Amy Elmore to produce a podcast all about mindset and music teacher and running a business. And that's Amy's got a background in psychology and counseling. And I love just that level of professionalism she brings to that whole conversation of mindset and healthy approaches to the work-life balance questions and teaching, and not just like us as entrepreneurs in our businesses, but also like how do we impart that mindset, healthy mindset to students. And that'll be
Nice.
launching later this spring.
Oh, that's exciting. All right. Well, that's in my wheelhouse. I love talking about those kind of things. So I look
Yes.
forward to that. So before we go, what quote do you have to share with us?
Yes. So one I constantly remind myself of is the perfect is the enemy of the good. That's Voltaire. I think lots of people have quoted it in different ways, but recovering perfectionistic classically trained piano player. That's something I'm always reminded of in business and in parenting and all the ways. There's so much. I can always see the better way to do something, and I have to be okay with good is enough.
Good enough. Oh, very good. Well, we'll close with that. Thank you so much, Andrea, for joining me.
Thank you so much, Leela.
If I could start all over again, I'd be enrolling in every course Andrea has to offer. I appreciate her savvy perspective and the way she's curated her knowledge of what teachers really need to know in order to run a successful and sustainable business. Make sure to head to the show notes for links to her courses, her podcast, and where to follow Andrea on social media. And don't forget to check out the Composium and find a date and time that works for you. Your creativity will thank you. This is Key Ideas, and I'm Leela Viss. See you in the trenches, and thankful that my taxes are filed.